welcome to my channel, Midnite Oil Software. I'm Greg, and it has been a really long time since I've tried to do a live stream. So this is really kind of an experiment. It won't be a long stream. I am basically going to demonstrate, hopefully, some of the upgrades that I've done to my 3D space shooter game in preparation for making it a multiplayer game. But hopefully the audio and everything is working, so if there is anybody actually watching, let me know in the comments. I think it should be working okay, but like I said, I haven't done a live stream in a really long time, so I know in the past YouTube has been finicky, and OBS and everything, getting it configured for live streaming has been finicky. But basically what I've done to my 3D space shooter game is I have updated it to Unity 6.3. And the biggest change was I updated it to use URP because when I originally developed it, I used standard render pipeline, which obviously if I'm going forward, I want to be using URP. That did break several things. In the original implementation, I had a background camera, and the background camera is what showed the skybox. And I had a skybox setter and a skybox component that I have now added to the main camera, and I've changed my culling mask and everything to get this to work. So now the sky setter is directly on the main camera. We no longer have this background camera. It just would not work with URP for whatever reason. A lot of my textures got broke, especially the ones for the explosion effects. I've got these detonator explosions. These are from, little trivia here, the very first asset that was ever put on the Unity Asset Store was detonator. And it's got some really realistic explosion effects, and I love using it, and it's free. But the problem is it's deprecated. So now actually the only way you can get it is if you download the package that I put up on my GitHub repo, which is linked in the description for the 3D Space Shooter tutorial series. But I did have to go in and fix some things to get this to work with URP. Also in the process of doing this, I discovered some bugs in my code. I discovered that when I spawned an explosion, well, actually when a projectile hit the asteroids, because I've got two blasters on my ship, I'm shooting two projectiles. I was actually spawning two what we call fractured rock fractures. So these are basically duplicates of the original asteroids, but it's fractured into multiple little pieces, and then I apply explosion force to send them flying in different directions. I was actually spawning two of these and two explosion effect instances because I was handling the take damage method from both projectiles. So basically the asteroid was getting destroyed twice. So I fixed that. That was a pretty easy bug to fix. But the idea is I want to start adding multiplayer functionality to this. And normally when you add multiplayer to a game, you want to start with multiplayer in mind from the very beginning. It's usually quite a bit more difficult to go back and add multiplayer to an existing game than it is to create a new game with multiplayer there from the beginning. But nevertheless, I'm going to try and add multiplayer to this, and I've actually put together a plan for how this is going to do. So first of all, I want to go over to what I'm actually going to build as part of this. I want to have a player ship combat system. So currently, the state of the tutorial is the player ship can't get destroyed. In fact, the player ship doesn't even take any damage. You can fly into asteroids, you can be hit by enemy projectiles and missiles, and you don't die. So I need to implement that. I need to add a shield to the player ship. I want to take damage and be destroyed. I want to create a player manager to dynamically spawn players. So right now there's one player ship, it never dies, and you just fly around destroying randomly spawned enemies and destroying asteroids. So we need to have a player manager that will spawn players and respawn you when you get destroyed. I want to implement object pooling. I'm not using any object pooling in this game right now, so we're spawning and respawning projectiles, asteroids, explosions, everything you can imagine. It's all just being created and destroyed, which can, of course, cause performance issues in your game when it goes to do garbage collection. And I also want to evaluate whether or not I should use dots for the asteroids. So I'm creating these big asteroid fields. So there's a ton of little objects that are having to be managed, managing their position and rotation and everything. And that could probably be improved using dots, especially if we're going to multiplayer. But I've done an initial evaluation of that, and I haven't decided yet if we're going to do that or not. So deliverables for the preparation step are adding the ability to take damage and be destroyed to the player ship, creating a player manager, implementing some object pooling, and then deciding whether or not we're going to use ECS. The next phase is to actually migrate this to use multiplayer. And I've broken this up into several phases, setting up and configuration, netcode, Unity gaming services, pulling in whatever packages I need, using my core multiplayer foundation stuff. The network ship controller is going to have to be created. We're going to implement weapon systems networking, enemy AI networking. Actually, I don't know if I'm going to worry about networking the enemy AI. Really, the networking is going to be for the players. I might even disable the enemy AIs completely once we get networking implemented. Game state and lobby integration needs to be done, and then UI and polish, testing and optimization. So, I want to do all this prepping to make it easier and smoother when we do want to go ahead and do the multiplayer migration. So I've documented the migration here. So we're going to have our project overview. It's currently a single-player 3D space combat game with a player-controlled spaceship using desktop and gamepad controls, AI-controlled enemy ships, physics-based movement and combat. We have blasters and missiles for our weapons. There's asteroid fields that serve as environmental obstacles. And we keep track of score and game state. So what we want to do is support up to 2 to 8 players in a shared space environment. This is going to be team up, either team up against enemy AIs or PvP. I think I'm pretty much just going to do PvP. I don't know. Maybe start there, and then we can look at adding in the AI enemies later. We definitely want to synchronize our physics-based gameplay, and we want to have our scoring and leaderboard and all that shared across network instances. So I've identified the things that need to be done. We have our key control systems, ship controller, desktop movement, desktop weapon, gamepad movement and weapon. This is all already there. AI systems we'll worry about later. So we want to basically take all of these guys and then migrate them to support multiplayer. And so this is the current data flow of the game. And this is going to be our multiplayer architecture. So we're going to have server authority on whatever player creates the game. They're going to be a host. And every other player will be a client. Actually, all the players will be a client, even the host. So he'll be a host client. And then we basically want to synchronize the physics state across the network. So one player acts as the host, he's a server and client. The other players connect as clients. The server has authority over the game state, and the clients have authority over their own input. So the player has their input, their camera, their UI, their VFX. They will make remote procedure calls to the server, which will manage game state, AI behavior, physics, and damage, and then that will be replicated to the clients, their position, their health, and their state. We're going to have different network variables, position and rotations for the network transforms. The health will be a network variable. Shield status will be a network variable. The score, and then the input will be basically a server RPC from the client to the server. So the enemy ships, again, that's going to be controlled by AI if we ever decide to do AI. The projectiles, they'll get spawned on the server and owned by the server, and it will handle movement and then that will be replicated to the clients. Same with the game state. So there's going to be a number of packages we're going to use. We're going to be using the Unity Services Core, Authentication, Game Objects, Lobby Relay, and Multiplayer Tools. Some of it we've already got installed. We're going to start out using my multiplayer boilerplate, which I've already done tutorials where I show how to make a 2D turn-based game. Basically, I remade Othello or Reverse Eye, and then I did a real-time Space War game, showing how you can make both kind of games using my multiplayer package. And we'll start out using this package, but I might expand on that because I might want to add some things like transferring ownership, so players can join games that are already in progress, and then if a player leaves, ownership can transfer to another player, and it doesn't kick everybody out. So that's possible things I'm going to do down the road. So again, we've already gone over the migration steps at the higher level, but once I start doing all of this implementation, we'll get into this in greater detail. And I've already spec'd out some of what I think I'm going to have to do, both in the Unity editor, with our prefabs and so forth, as well as code changes we're going to make for new components and existing components, migrating them over. So that's pretty much what I have in mind. By the way, all of these diagrams and all of this documentation was generated using a AI code assistant called Bezzy. Bezzy basically integrates directly with Unity, and it understands your entire project. And so it's able to analyze my project, and when I want to say, well, how would I add, multiplayer integration to this, it can give me a plan. So all of this was AI generated, right? And then, of course, it'll be a lot of iteration as we go through and actually start implementing all of this. And I'm sure that AI will not have gotten everything right on the initial take. But I'm looking forward to this. I meant to do this during my lunch break today, but I took a very, very late lunch, which is another reason why this stream is going to be so short today. But that's what I plan to do. I finished my last major tutorial projects, my multiplayer projects, and I don't really have any new tutorial projects planned, so I thought it would be fun to just periodically live stream and work on this project live, just adding multiplayer support to the 3D space shooter, and I thought people might enjoy watching and following along. So it doesn't look like there's any comments in the live chat. Or actually, I see Easy or Ray said hi. Hi, and welcome aboard. And yeah, so I think that's going to be pretty much it for today. I'm going to wrap this up. And I just realized that I was not sharing my screen all that time I was talking. So let me back up a little bit. And I'll just quickly review what we just discussed. I told you, I'm really rusty at my live streaming. So hopefully y'all can see this. But this is the plan for the multiplayer migration. This is a high level what I plan to do. And then the migration guide that I was discussing that you couldn't see is where we've got all the details of our plan to migrate this, with all of our architecture diagrams, all the proposed changes, how we're going to be pulling in the multiplayer boilerplate, the packages we're going to install, the core multiplayer foundation work. So we're going to be creating a network damage handler. We're going to be creating a playership network prefab. And this is all the stuff we'll have to do in the Unity editor. And then this is the overall ownership settings for the authority mode for the game. This is how we're going to do position synchronization, rotation synchronization, scale settings. I need to fix the contrast of these guys. They're not very easy to read. Some advanced settings for performance. So this is all some interesting things. This is all available on my GitHub repo. I'll put a link in the description. just so you all can follow along if you all want to just read over what the plan is going to be for this. But this is the overall plan for migrating this project from single player to multiplayer, different considerations I want to consider, how we're going to do some troubleshooting, next steps after migration. I definitely think I might want to look into a dedicated server where you just have a game that's always up and running and you can just go and jump in and join it. So yeah, these are just some things that I think would be fun. Let me go ahead and end the stream, and I'll go ahead and put these links in the description so you all can browse them at your leisure.